Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Sin and Tonic. Today's story is about the ultimate bunny boiler. This is the story of the tragic murder of Sadie Hartley. Let's go. Sin and Tonic! So for this story we are not going to start at the beginning, just to throw it all out of sync. Trust me. So we're going to start on the 15th of January in 2016. Now, Sadie Hartley is a 60-year-old, very successful business owner. And on the 15th of January in 2016, a colleague of Sadie's rings the police. She's concerned and they haven't heard from her in over 24 hours. You know, this is somebody that's normally integrated into her business and she's unavailable, and that's unlike her. Suspicious. The police take that on board and they say that they will go and check out the address and go and see Sadie Hartley and make sure everything is okay. Really, really sadly and horrifically, everything is not okay. Everything is really far from okay. The police arrive at Sadie's address, excuse me, and what they find is when they arrive at the address, they can see into the hallway and they can see the body of Sadie Hartley in the hallway, face down, with a lot of blood. I listened to a documentary and you could hear the officers talking about it on their radios and things, and just saying that they would need to force entry, things like that. I think they just always have to cover their back. This case is very well executed. So a lot of cases that I cover, things happen and the police do things, or the detectives, and things are sometimes like bungled is the word that's often used, like they bungled the investigation. This investigation was like down. They did everything by the book, and a lot of the investigation was filmed as well. The filming of the investigation as it happened, it's on YouTube. It was really interesting to watch and actually see in real life how these things happen. So the police forced entry by breaking a window next to the front door to get into the property. And this is when they confirm that Sadie Hartley has died. And it's very obvious from the crime scene that she has been stabbed multiple times in her back and her thighs, and multiple times, very, very much. Now, detectives at the scene and police officers that were at the scene, they just described it as like one of the worst scenes they've ever come across in their career. The violence in the attack was just very, it was real. It was up there. It would be described later on as an orgy of violence. That paints a picture, doesn't it? There was no forced entry other than what the police did, but up until that point there'd been no forced entry into the property. So did she let her attacker in? To start with, they contact her family. So they contact her daughter, who really sadly, a few days before this, had just got engaged and was on holiday. Oh, by the way, this is the last video that I'm going to film in the shed because the kids go back to school next week. Ooh, cheers to that. They also contact Ian Johnson, and this is Sadie's boyfriend, partner, and they've been together for a couple of years, and at the time he is skiing. He's abroad skiing. I know what you were thinking, because I thought the same. When I first read it, I was like, it's always the boyfriend or the husband or the partner. No, not in this case. He is definitely alibied out. He's abroad. So he's not there. They contact him, they phone him, let him know what's happened. Again, what a phone call to get. And he has some information. So Sadie's daughter, Charlotte, she was just in a state and grieving, and she could not think of anybody that would want to hurt her mum or would have any grudges against her. She's like, no, she's amazing, she's perfect. Everybody likes my mum, she's so kind. All of these lovely things, which I imagine are true about Sadie. But Ian, he had some sort of like nuggets of information that the police could start to go on. So Ian stated that in the August of the year before, there had been a break-in to Sadie's home, and this had really shaken her up. And as it would, it's such a breach of like well, just your life, isn't it? It would really freak me out as well. So she was very anxious and very freaked out. Also, the week before her murder, literally one whole week before, an event had happened that had really freaked her out again. She called Ian and told him about it. So basically, she was at home and the door went. She answered the door and she said that a lady in a baseball cap had bought her a bunch of cheap, she described them as like cheap flowers, and like delivered them to Sadie, and she'd asked for her by name, Sadie Hartley, and then handed over these like cheap bouquet of flowers. And Sadie, when she spoke to Ian, she felt like this was connected to the break-in back in August. So something wasn't sitting right with her and it really freaked her out. Again, as it would. There's no note with the flowers, just this person coming to the door, dropping them off. It's odd. Oh, excuse me. And that is odd, isn't it? Like, that would get my heckles up, definitely. Sadie was meant to be joining Ian the following day to go on to carry on his ski trip with him. He'd been out of the country for 10 days on his ski vacation holiday, and she was going to join him on the 15th. And obviously, very sadly, she didn't make it because she was murdered on the evening of the 14th of January. Ian says to the police, look, I'm going to catch a flight home. I'm coming home and I'll be back tomorrow. At this point, the police are like, okay, so we've got this situation with the burglary last year and the flowers, and that's a bit odd, isn't it? And then they decide that they're going to start doing door-to-door interviews with all of the neighbours, and that they're going to start canvassing the area, like looking for the murder weapon, and also looking at CCTV. Sadie lived in a very nice part of Helmshaw. Every house on her road was not overlooked. The other side of the road was woodland and things like that. So there was no, in this case, that's beautiful, isn't it? But sadly, there's no witnesses really to the event. So on the opposite side of the road is no houses. Each house is at least £500,000. They're all detached because it is an affluent area. Most of the houses, or a few of the houses on the road, do have CCTV. So they gather all of that, and that goes back to the police station ready for people to sift through. And there's a young man who remembers seeing a car that was unusual for the road, out of place, with a woman inside of it. So they've got that. It's not much to go on, but they have got this information now. Back at the police station, they start sifting through all of this CCTV footage, and this is where they start to piece everything together. They notice a Renault Clio, and they notice this Renault Clio on the night of the flower delivery. So they know when this flower delivery was because they've spoken to Ian, and they go back to that day and they notice that this Renault Clio. They also notice that on the night of the murder. So they're piecing things together. So this car has got something to do with Sadie's murder. And also it is out of place. One of the police officers noted that when they were canvassing the area and when they were doing door-to-door interviews with the neighbourhood people, you know what I mean, with the neighbourhood crew, you know what I mean. When they were doing that and talking to everybody in the neighbourhood, they noticed that all of the cars were Porsches and fancy cars, and this Clio, old Clio, stuck out like a sore thumb. Don't know if anyone saw my eye twitch then. I felt it. It felt really weird, and you could definitely see it, but probably not. General help. Now it starts to get spicy. Up until this point, there is not much to go on. Not much at all. A Clio, someone saw somebody in a car. They have no idea what's happened to Sadie. And then Ian comes home. He's home from his ski trip and he's like, right, okay, I have an ex-girlfriend. And then he just starts spilling the beans about this woman. So he's got this ex-girlfriend called Sarah Williams. He dated Sarah Williams 2 years ago. He ended his relationship with Sarah Williams 2 years previously because she was kind of creepy. A bunny boiler. She even said it herself in an interview that he thought she was too obsessive and clingy, and she's like, well, he thought that, but I don't, obviously. So yeah, so he called it off with her. He's like, okay, so I've got this batshit crazy ex girlfriend. She's totally obsessed with me, and she wrote a letter to Sadie. So the letter is found, brought in, and the police look at it, and there's enough like, ooh, okay, feeling about it that they start to look into Sarah Williams. They're like, okay, this is the best lead we've got. Let's have a go. They start by looking at her phone records to see if perhaps she could have been anywhere near the scene of the murder or the flower drop, because they think these two things are connected. Like quite quickly, they assume that the flower delivery, this weird, strange flower delivery by the woman with the baseball cap, is connected to her murder. And they think this because they feel like whoever dropped the flowers was scoping it out, looking at her routine, seeing if she would be home at that time, making sure that they had the right person at the right address. P.S. The road that Sadie Hartley lived on was called Sunnybank Road. How lovely does that sound? It's always weird when there's like awful, horrible thing, beautiful setting, or like awful, horrible thing, like something really cute. It's like, just doesn't match up, does it? It makes it even more eerie and weird, I think. Gives you goosebumps. Sure enough, Sarah's phone, ping, 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 it pings up that it was in Helmshaw on the night of the flower drop. It was there. So it pinged a tower near there. At this point, they're like, we think we have enough to like bring her in and start questioning her. And I think you get like 5 days, or is it a week? You get like an amount of time that you can question somebody on suspicion of something before you have to charge them. So you have to gather enough evidence in that time to charge them. Otherwise, you've just got to let them go. So it must be like sweaty bum time when they like go for it. So that sounded wrong. You know what I mean? Now this is epic. They don't even know whether like Sarah's really going to be still in the country, because if she did do this, might she have fled or what have you? But no, she's at home. And then they go to her address at 3:30 in the morning, and they just like pick the lock, or like, you know, take the lock off and just barge into her house, and they just like fly in, and they're like, Bella! It's like proper crazy loud. Like everyone on her road must have just been like, whoa, what? Noisily, loads of police, like loads of noise going in there, and there's video footage of it, and she's just like in bed, like can you imagine at 3 o'clock in the morning? Like, yeah, that's going to be a shock to the system. There's dogs barking, that's all kicking off. They were not taking any chances in her like getting suspicious that she was going to get arrested or anything. They were just like, let's grab her and get her and be done with it. They now have Sarah Williams in custody, and they definitely use the element of surprise. When she's booked in, like blah, 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 do you understand why you've been arrested? Yeah. She still looks tired as shit. Like she looks really, really tired and not with it at all. I was like, is she on drugs or something? But I think she's just like dopey. And then like, this always gets me, because when you see these things, you're like, you're just watching it and you're like, yeah, well, I know what has happened. So like, I'm just watching it. But then I think, oh, if that was me and I was an innocent person, and at 3 o'clock in the morning the police officers like barged in my house, knocked my door down, and like came upstairs and arrested me, would I hell be standing there like, what? No. I'd be like beside myself. I'd be like, oh my god, I haven't done anything, what's happened? Don't know what's going on. Do you know what I mean? Like, she is cool as a cucumber. She is so cool as a cucumber that you're like, oh my god, just like have a panic, because you look guilty as hell. So, well, spoiler alert, she is. They ask her, is there anybody that they should contact to say where she is? You know, like, you've been arrested, should we tell somebody? And she's like, oh yeah, my boyfriend, David. So turns out that Sarah has a proper sugar daddy. He's like 75. Oh, I should have mentioned, she's 34. And David goes round like every morning at 5 o'clock. So he leaves his marital home. Marital? That's right, isn't it? So he leaves his wife in bed and he hops over to Sarah's house at 5 o'clock every morning. I wonder what for. His wife knows about it. Like, this is the agreement, this is the arrangement, each to their own. Over the course of a few days, Sarah is interviewed multiple times. I think the very first question that they asked her was, did she do any harm to Sadie? And she answered, no, definitely not. Definitely not. And other than that, they just sort of go through the process of finding out where she was and what she was doing on that day, the 14th. She said that she got sent home with a sick bug from work. She went home, she saw David, he came round, and then she said she was going to go for a nap. Whether that was a really shite attempt at like trying to have an alibi, like, oh, I was with David and then I was sick and I went to bed. Shut up. But whatever. So yeah, I mean, he did say, yes, I saw her, yeah. She said she stayed in bed until about 9 and then the dog puked or something and she cleared up dog sick. Lovely. And then went back to bed. So yeah, really poorly in bed the whole time. And the first interview wasn't much more than that. Okay. All the while behind the scenes, you've got these police officers that are just like dig, like trying to find every ounce of information. And at this point, they are in Sarah Williams' house. They're like looking for everything and anything under the sun in this girl's house. Like I said, thorough. There was piles of like envelopes. They're all in their proper gear, like head to toe, masks on, gloves on. Do you know what I mean? It's like watertight. Like I said, like everything is spot on. And they are enveloping up. I mean, I don't even know what. Like just everything she fucking owned, it looked like. Just shove it in an envelope, we're taking it, we're going to look at it. And they did find minute amounts of blood in her bathroom, in really odd places. So sort of like on the side of the bath, on this bit of the bath, you know, sort of area. Bit odd. And they noted that the house stunk to high heaven of bleach. So she just had a good old bleaching session in the house. It smelt like the entire house had just been bleached from top to bottom. That's suspicious. Obviously, any blood evidence has to go in to be looked at in a lab to discover whose blood it is and what have you. So at the time that they've brought her in, this is all going down and they get that blood evidence in and it's got to be looked at. Like, is this Sadie's blood? Because if it is, that kind of clinches the deal. In the meantime, they're like, this flower delivery is playing on their mind, the detectives, because Sadie described the delivery of the flowers and the person that delivered them. And Sadie also knows what Sarah looks like. So this flower delivery that they really think is linked to her murder, it could not have been Sarah Williams because she would have just known who it was. And she said it was a lady, a woman with a baseball cap on. And she very quickly said, Sadie Hartley, she confirmed her name and then she gave her the flowers. So this would suggest that Sarah Williams, if she's connected with Sadie's murder, she had an accomplice. Interesting. This leads them to look into Sarah a little bit more and her friendships, and they very quickly find a best friend of Sarah's called Katrina Walsh, Kit for short. A young man previously on Sunnybank Road said that he saw a car with a woman and a bald man inside of it, and this was suspicious. This was before the murder. So, And these flowers were delivered by a lady or a woman in a baseball cap. When the police head to Katrina's to question her and see what the fuss is about, if anything's going on, if she knew that Sarah was planning anything or what have you, get the down low. When she opens the door, she's wearing a baseball cap. And then very quickly, it's divulged when she removes her cap that she suffers with alopecia and she is basically bald, apart from a few bits of hair. So that is like spicy, isn't it? Because is this the woman that delivered the flowers and that the boy saw on Sunnybank Road? It definitely seems like it. Turns out that Katrina and Sarah became friends many years ago. When Sarah was only 17, she would go to Katrina's riding stables. So Katrina owns stables and horses and is a riding instructor. Moons ago, this is where their friendship struck up. First things first, the police look at Katrina's phone records. Was she in Helmshaw on the night of the flower delivery drop. Bingo! Yes, she was. They also find CCTV footage. Again, this was such a good investigation. They find CCTV footage of the local Tesco's, and in it, on the night of the delivery drop, is Sarah and her best friend Katrina, or Kit, buying a bunch of flowers. Okay. They now definitely have enough to arrest Kit on suspicion of murder. Up until this point, Sarah's been in custody and she's had a couple of interviews and she has remained as calm as you fancy. She honestly is just like, it's like this sort of thing happens every day to her. She's just like, just going with the flow, like totally relaxed. Like I said, very unusual. She's not freaked out at all by it at all. So, yeah. Whatever. In an interview, they tell Sarah that Kit has been arrested and they divulge some information that they've got on Sarah and Kit. And at this point, she just flips off. She's like, no comment, no comment, no comment, no comment. It's so annoying. I mean, her defence have probably told her definitely to do that when the shit hit the fan. But it is annoying. The only response that she really ever gave to anything after that point was when they told her that Kit was arrested. And she was just really petulant and just like, oh, well, I hope they didn't wake her up at 3 o'clock in the morning like they did me, because it was absolutely terrifying. It was so terrifying. It was like the worst experience I've ever had in my life. It's like, how about you open your front door and then you get stabbed to death? You stupid woman. Honestly, when I was listening to her talk, I was just like, are you... something wrong with you? Knowing that she's done what she's done, I mean, shut up. At this point in the investigation, they get some information about a small piece of metal that was found in the roll neck of Sadie's jumper. They're not entirely sure what that is at that point, but then somebody in forensics recognises it as part of a stun gun. Yeah, what the hell? But they don't have any more information than that, just like this guy's like, that I think that's from a stun gun. They start to interview Katrina. She's now been brought into custody. She is a different kettle of fish to Sarah. She is tetchy, scared, confused. Childlike is the word I'm looking for. She's very childlike. She's very quick to talk and say things, and they're like, you know, shut up, you don't need to say anything right now, like just stop talking. But she really wants to get it across that she's like got a memory problem. Oh, you know, I've had so many accidents, fallen off of horses and what have you, and I've got a memory problem. And if I don't, like, if I have one sleep, I might remember something. But if it's 2 sleeps, I might not. And if it's 3 sleeps, I definitely don't remember what happened. So, like, okay. But like I say, very childlike. And almost when I'm watching it, I was thinking, oh, you know, has she just been properly, like, groomed into something here? Like, is she this really vulnerable adult that's being dragged along for the ride? Maybe she is. But, you know, this is what is portrayed, definitely. She can't remember. They tell her, like, slow down, you know, you just stop talking, you know, we're not asking you any questions, we're just signing you into custody, like, shut up. And she's like, but if I don't tell you stuff, I'm going to forget. So she's like, yeah, like, very childlike and very crazy. Then she tells police that she's written about all of this in her diary. And there were some pages found and stuff like that, but at this point, like, nothing major. A bit confusing, like, doesn't really give much away or say much of anything, but that she's scared of Sarah effectively. And okay, and she maintains that from the beginning. She says that she's petrified of Sarah, very, very scared of Sarah, and like, she really clearly paints that picture. All the while, the police are searching everywhere. They are now also searching the farm because, like I said, excuse me, my eye is very itchy today. What's occurring? That was a face. Like I said, Katrina, she's a riding instructor and she has her horses on this farm, a very large farm, and she's talked about this farm because she can't ever keep her mouth shut. She keeps talking about it and about stuff being there and whatever. So the police, they start searching at this farm, and it's huge, and they say it's going to take a long time and lots of manpower to search, but obviously they're looking for a murder weapon, possibly a stun gun, and yeah, like any evidence really. And they've been looking for days, all around Sunnybank Road and in the woodland there and in the streams. Like, they've been tirelessly searching for this murder weapon. So now they're moving their search to the farm because they think, you know, Katrina's got something to do with this. All the while, Sarah's in her cell or in her interviews. No comment, no comment, no comment, no comment, with everything that is presented to her. They find in their searchings of Sarah's abode an old Nokia phone under her bed. Turns out that she last used that phone on the day of the flower drop. They also find that she was using the phone to call garages. Now they're thinking, she's bought a car, effectively. So they go to the last phone number of the garages that she called, assuming that, and they were right, that the last phone number would be where she went and bought a car. And it was. They discover that she bought a blue Renault Clio, which is the car that they see on the CCTV footage on the flower delivery day drop and the night of Sadie's murder. And they're really struggling over the net. Once they've discovered this, they really, really struggle to find the car. Even though they've got the number plate, they just cannot find this car. And that's really unusual. And they're like, what the hell? Like, they cannot find where this car is at all. Turns out, the cheeky little doodah, and this was some good detective work as well, some amazing police officer discovers or thinks, what if that was like a 0 or a 3 or whichever way around it is? And they work out that she's changed the number plate of the car with like sticky tape. Like, you know, cheeky moo. So then they find the car. The minute they know what the real number plate is, they find the Clio. It's like in a car park, like 55 miles away. And they just go and get it. And they're like, yep. And when they recover the car, no one touches the car. It's attached to a lorry. And again, it's all filmed and it's attached to the lorry thing and it's put up on there. Bob's your uncle, Fanny's your aunt. Boom. No one touches the car, no one touches inside of the car, and it gets taken to forensics to be looked at. And there is blood inside of the car. The results come back, and the blood at Sarah's house is Sadie's. I mean, boom. This is the point where they're like, we're going to nail this home, because that blood is the murder victim's and it's in her house. How can she explain that? She's always maintained and stuck to her story that she hasn't seen Sadie for years and that she was asleep in bed with the sick bug on the night of the murder. So there's no possible way, unless she's changing her story, that Sadie's blood could be in her bathroom. No way. Like, how does that work? They're going to approach Sarah about this little nugget of information. She's interviewed for 6 hours and more. It just keeps going, and they're obviously trying to really wear her down, break her down. They just keep throwing the evidence at her. The CCTV, they show her the CCTV footage of herself and Kit, and CCTV footage of Sunnybank Road and her car. They show her all of it, and they give her all of the evidence that they have got against her. The blood, the phone, the masks and stuff like that. The fact that they found the Clio. They give her everything over this like really long interview. And the entire time, all she ever says is no comment. At this point, she's charged with the murder of Sadie Hartley. They have so much evidence against her that it's like, they've got her. And if they didn't have her, the interviews with Katrina certainly threw her right under the bus. Oh my gosh, like it was like something else watching the interviews with Katrina. She is incredibly, again, childlike, again, freaked out, confused. She mentions that like she's only got a 3-day memory. She's like a real life Dory, for God's sake. Like she's properly like lays it on thick that she doesn't remember shit, and that she's like almost like she very much portrays that she's this victim, and that Sarah has somehow it's like she's realising what's happened as the interview's gone on. She's like, she gave me a bag and she did it, didn't she? She murdered this person. Oh my God. And then she has a proper freak out. She's like hyperventilating. She's like, I looked in the bag. And it's like, okay, calm down. You kind of think like this is either like very genuinely sad for Katrina and she is not all there and she's been dragged into this mess, or she's an incredible actress. I'll let you decide that. She talks about everything. She talks about the fact that there is a stun gun. There was a stun gun. The fact that there was a knife, the fact that she hid all of the evidence. So, you know, she's really going to town. She's like, yeah, and that Sarah did it and everything. It's all out there. She blabs about the lot. What a contrast. No comment, no comment, no comment. Can't shut up, can't shut up, can't shut up. Jesus. She describes, I shouldn't laugh, but she describes the stun gun as a squeezy, squeezy, crackly, crackly. Okay. And when the interviewer says, can you tell me about the knife? She's just like, it's a knife. Dear me. Katrina kind of tries to say that she thought she was like playing Hunted and that this whole thing was just a game, because they question her and say like, why didn't you go to the police? Because I was more scared of Sarah than the police. Okay. Why were you going along on these like missions with her, and why were you dropping flowers off, and why were you hiding evidence? Why? She was just like, she maintained she was petrified of Sarah, and that she thought she was just playing a game, that it wasn't really going to happen. I'm not sure. They then do something really unusual and they take Katrina to the farm where she says that she's hidden all of the evidence because they need the evidence. And basically, like, Katrina can't really even like form a sentence. So I think it was for that purpose. They just were like, we need to just take her there and she can just like point. And literally she did. She, like, knife, keys, like she just pointed at all the evidence. And all of the evidence was like hidden under horse shit, basically. She basically was just like, I just put shit on it. So, okay. When they found the knife, there was actually still blood on the end of it. Like, there was still blood there. Ugh. This now makes Katrina, there's no turning back. She's an accomplice. So she is also charged. When they search Kit's property, they find diaries. Now, she always said that she kept diaries because of her memory problem. And, oh, they were interesting to read and dark. Turns out that this murder plot, and it was a murder plot, this was 100% premeditated, was in the process 18 months before the murder took place. 18 months before Sadie Hartley was murdered, Sarah Williams was talking to Katrina Walsh about murdering Sadie. They would meet up, it was brought up, she was saying that she wanted to get rid of her. It's just like mad. And the amount of stuff that Kit has written about in these diaries, there's a lot of information in these diaries. There's also pages that have been removed. And this would suggest that Kit was sound enough of mind that she went back and removed pieces of evidence out of the diary. So she definitely remembered that she'd written things that were incriminating in there and took them out. So 3-day memory, my arse. She wrote things like about how excited she was that she might actually get to participate in this act of like murder. That she was so excited that she was a part of it, and that they would stay up all night long and talk about murder plots and how they would get their like revenge. What? No, Kit. One night she was so excited and stuff about the prospect of it all and their late night conversation about the whole thing that she had to have herself a Southern Comfort to calm down. Something else. Ultimately, a very bizarre relationship came out, between Sarah and Kit. This friendship wasn't normal. There's lots of weirdness to it. And yeah. It seemed very much like Kit was just infatuated with Sarah, and that yes, she would go along with anything Sarah wanted to do because, there was this very weird relationship, very odd, but it doesn't make it okay, does it? But one entry is chilling because she actually writes that she has no moral qualms about committing murder. The only thing that she's got is a slight twinge about being caught. So the diaries absolutely blow Kit's defence out of the water. It's like what she's portraying is not what she is. This was premeditated. She knew full well that somebody was going to die. She was planning it. She planned the murder with Sarah. This is not just someone that's been brought along for the ride. Although it was argued by Kit's ex-husband that she was manipulated and groomed over the course of years into playing a part in this murder. So it's difficult it's hard to know really, because who knows? But she seemed to enjoy the process of planning this murder. with Sarah. So ultimately CCTV just pieced the whole thing together, and it was so interesting watching the way that this investigation worked. Excuse me, can't speak. A week before the murder, ultimately Sarah and Kit went to Sunnybank Road with a bunch of flowers which they bought in the local Tesco's, and they went to the address, and Sarah was probably like hiding so that she could see and make sure that it was definitely Sadie, while Kit knocked on the door, asked Sadie her name, and then gave her the flowers, and then off she went. So this was to clarify that this was definitely where Sadie lived, it was definitely her address, and that she definitely would be home at that time. They then went to They then went to a local pub and had a drink and carried on discussing like their plans and what they were going to do and how the murder was going to go down. On the night of the murder, it was arranged that Sarah would drive the Clio with the changed number plate to Sunnybank Road, that she would go to Sadie's property. She's never talked about it, so she's never said exactly what happened, but effectively she knocked on the door and Sadie's body was found a bit into the house, which would suggest she was walking away from Sarah, and then she was tased in her neck area and then stabbed 24 times. There was 24 stab wounds and 17 slash wounds, and there were defensive wounds on her right hand and right arm, so she did try to defend herself. So that's a lot of stab wounds. That was a ferocious, callous, sustained attack on Sadie. Just awful. The stun gun was to debilitate her, make sure that she couldn't, I mean, I don't know, it's just awful, just really, really sad. After the murder, Sarah goes back to the Clio. She drives to a car park, and this is where she meets Kit. She gets into Kit's car and they return back to Sarah's address. At the address, she obviously washes herself, and this is where the blood has ended up in her bathroom, and she gives all of the evidence to Kit. So Kit is then in charge of destroying all of the evidence. She tries to destroy the boots that Sarah was wearing when she murdered Sadie. She cuts up all of the clothing and she's going to burn it, and then she goes to the farm the following day and hides all of the evidence. Eventually they also search in Sarah's car and they find a pair of sunglasses, and they find minute amounts of blood on those as well, and that is Sadie's blood. When it came to trial, they both just turned against each other. They were not having, they were just like, no, it was her, it was her, it was her, it was her. So just both like as you would, I suppose, just completely try and use the other one as a scapegoat for the murder. But there was just enough evidence, very clear evidence about what went down. Ian Johnson, 10 days before the murder, was having communications with Sarah behind Sadie's back. What a douche. They arranged to meet up when he got back from his skiing holiday. Knob. And basically it was like sexy texts back and forth. Honestly. Now he got loads of grief for this, because it's like, what are you doing? Like, that's leading her on. And people thought that maybe like these text messages between him and Sarah are what caused her to murder Sadie. Like, oh my God, he wants me back. Like, why lead on the beast? Like, like you said it yourself, she's obsessive and weird. Why are you like sexting her? I don't know if that's a term, but why are you doing that? Do you know what I mean? Like, what? Jesus, like, control yourself, man. No, planning for 18 months. 18 months. So it's like probably highly unlikely that a couple of like dirty messages between the pair of them 10 days before the murder was like, I mean, who knows? Maybe it was the catalyst for Sarah to think, oh no, I am actually really going to do this because there might be a chance. Let's get her out of the way. Who knows? But what, that's his cross to bear. Like he has to live with that for the rest of his life. And he did get a lot of, her family never spoke to him again after that. Ultimately, it was just heartbreaking and tragic and sad watching the interviews that were with Charlotte, which was Sadie's daughter. It was just heart-wrenching. They were both found guilty, and Sarah Williams was sentenced to a minimum of 30 years in prison, and Katrina Walsh was sentenced to a minimum of 25 years in prison. So they're both in prison for a very long time. Good news. No amount of time or punishment brings somebody back. And that is just the truth, isn't it? A really tragic ending for this poor Sadie Hartley, who ultimately, well, she did nothing wrong. My thoughts are really with her children and her family. There were some interviews that I watched, and yeah, like, she's really left a massive hole in her family's life. She sounds like she was just a really lovely, wonderful person, and she's really, really missed. Yeah, just a really sad, tragic, pointless loss of somebody's life. They always are, but yeah, it just felt pathetic. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Sin and Tonic. I hope you can join me for another true crime story next week, and a beautiful glass of gin. Bye!